Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean.
EAGLES. Eagles.
Welcome into the Malamut Law pregame show here from the incredible Ocean Casino, the Gallery Bar, Book, and Games in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Marc Farzetta, Seth Joyner, Alan Malamut here of Malamut Law here at the amazing Ocean Casino. But we do have some news that we need to get to immediately, and that's the status of Eagles right tackle Lane Johnson. Woke up this morning with soreness in his groin, was testing it out a little bit during pregame warmups. We were awaiting the official word. He is right now listed as questionable. The inactive should be coming out at about 2:50 today. For more on this situation and how Lane looked during pregame warmups, we're going to go to Lincoln Financial Field and talk to our NFL insider, John McMullen, standing by at the link. John, what's the latest you've heard on Eagles right tackle Lane Johnson?
Lane was just out, guys, working individually. Looking on was Jeff Stoutland, Howie Roseman, Tom Hunkley, who's the vice president of sports performance, Ted Rath, and the Eagles chief medical officer, Arsh Denoda, was also out there. So all the big wigs were out there watching Lane go through his workout to sort of see if he's ready to go. Right now, as we're speaking, Cam Jurgens is out working with Jack Driscoll, so I don't think that's a positive sign. It'll be official at about 2:55. As you mentioned, Lane woke up this morning with some soreness in his groin, underwent an MRI, was getting treatment, and he just, as I mentioned, worked out pregame with everyone looking on. Looked a little bit ginger at times as he was doing it, so it won't be official until 2:55, but the fact that Jack Driscoll's out there right now working with Cam Jurgens, not a positive sign.
Certainly. And, John, I know we're going to check back with you a little bit later in the program as we normally do, but just one follow-up to the Lane Johnson situation. Any other signs as to what could have led to this? Anything during the week that suggested he could be having groin soreness?
No, he was a full go at practice all week. Now, a little bit of a strange week because of the holiday, short week as well. So the Eagles had essentially a walkthrough. They did practice on Thanksgiving, and they had a small practice on Friday as well. Lane was never listed on any injury reports. He was a full participant in all the activity. So it was a sort of freak thing this morning. But, you know, Lane's gone through a lot over the years, and he's played through injuries. And remember, when you talk about injury reports, guys, it's not saying there's nothing wrong with you. In other words, when you're listed on the injury report, it means you haven't participated in part of practice. So if we can use Jalen Hurts as an example, with the knee injury, he was never listed on an injury report because he participated in all practices. Doesn't mean he wasn't banged up. Same holds true with Lane Johnson.
Understood. John, look forward to catching up with you later, hopefully with some better news as to the status of Lane Johnson. But you're right, Jack Driscoll being out there for warm-ups and being out there with Cam Jurgens, not the best of signs. John McMullen, thanks so much. We'll talk to you a little bit later in the program.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate you. Eagles right now, in case you're wondering, you're Googling, and maybe you've done it already when it comes to checking the Eagles' record without Lane Johnson, it's not good. 13-22 without Lane Johnson as your starting right tackle for the Philadelphia Eagles. 13-22, 9 games under 500. Not great. Not great. So obviously the Eagles are going to be waiting with bated breath, and so will we, as to the status of the Eagles All-Pro right tackle Lane Johnson and whether or not he will be able to give it a go. Official again, the 90-minute meeting takes place 90 minutes before kickoff. That's when the inactives are released, and Lane Johnson hopefully will not be on that list and will be playing just as we expected him to when we woke up this morning. But yes, again, welcome into the Malamut Law pregame show. I'm Marc Farzetta. I'll bring in our panelists today. Bill Colarulo will be joining us a little bit later on in the program. Eagles Hall of Famer Seth Joyner, of course, on the show today, and Adam Malamut of Malamut Law as well. Seth, first and foremost, want to get your take on the Lane Johnson situation and the impact him potentially not playing would have on the Eagles today.
Well, there's no doubt about it. It's a big deal. You alluded to the record, but the record doesn't tell the whole story, because whatever the game plan was going into this game is going to be altered big time, because you got to make sure. The last time Jack Driscoll had to step in for Lane, they had all kind of protection issues. So if that's going to be the case going into this game, they're going to have to account for that, meaning that maybe that's the reason why they activated an extra tight end yesterday. Realizing that you're probably going to need help on that side, especially if they want to pass the ball. And they seem to want to pass the ball much more than they actually want to run the football. And for you not to have to change the game plan so drastically, you already miss a Dallas Goedert. So that's one weapon that's already down. So now if you're going to help keep Jalen clean and you're going to throw the ball 35-plus times, then you're going to have to leave a tight end on that side, or the back is going to have to chip before he releases on that side. So this alters a lot of things, not let alone the record. It alters how Brian Johnson and Nick Sirianni is going to want to call plays today. They have to be cognizant of that.
Now, when you woke up this morning, Adam, we're looking at a team here in the Buffalo Bills coming into town that have struggled to find some consistency. They haven't won back-to-back games since weeks 3 and weeks 4 this season, and now they're coming off a huge win against the Jets, albeit against the Jets, but a division rival.
Us, though.
Right, but a division rival to them. The Eagles are 9-1. This is supposed to be a win for them. They're home again. They're coming off an emotional win. We could talk about and debate about the trap game a little bit later on. But when it comes to this matchup, Lane Johnson is a huge chunk out of the playbook here for the Philadelphia Eagles. How are you feeling knowing that Lane Johnson's status is now up in the air?
Farzy, week 11 of 2020. Do you remember where you were?
Week 11 of 2020?
It doesn't really matter, because that was the last time that Lane Johnson gave up a sack. You cannot replace a guy like him. And listen, with full and due respect to Jack Driscoll and any packages they put together to give Jalen Hurts additional protection, this shifts the entire landscape of how they have to call plays. And, this season, personally, I'll speak for myself, I haven't been real happy with how they've called plays for Jalen. Now Jalen's going to miss, one of his 2 key bookends, a guy who, is arguably the best right tackle in the league. And now, I'm worried about the weather conditions. It's cold, it's rainy down at the link. If Jalen gets that ball in his hand and gets a little foot happy, I'm worried about him getting hurt. I'm worried about them not executing right. So it's a little bit of a different game than I thought it was going to be. But I'll tell you, I've been watching this game all week, and I've been worried about this game because this is a must-win for Buffalo. If Buffalo doesn't win, Miami takes one more game lead in the AFC East, and nobody expected that. I think entering the season, Buffalo was the favorite for the AFC East, and giving up that opportunity, they've got to come out and play hard, and I'm worried about this game.
Seth, when we look at a situation like this, obviously the game plan, as Adam's talking about here, with the Eagles' offense changes drastically, not having a right tackle like Lane Johnson, protection, running the football, pass blocking, changes a lot. But from a defensive perspective, for a team like the Buffalo Bills, who are another Jim Johnson disciple with Sean McDermott, just like with Steve Spagnuolo, how much does a defensive game plan shift in being able to maybe potentially exploit the weakness of a Jack Driscoll?
Well, it all comes down to situational football. If they know that they've got him in predictable situations, they're going to bring pressure from that side. They're not just going to put their best pass rusher over there. You're going to see Von Miller line up over there. He's now in spot duty as far as how they play him. He is a pass rush specialist for them in obvious passing situations. But they're also going to run, a lot of their blitzes are going to come from that side. They're going to show on one side, and they're going to bring it from the other side and see whether he can make the right decisions, on that side. Most of the time you take the most dangerous and you let the guy on the outside go. A lot of times, guys that don't play a lot, they make the decision to do the exact opposite sometimes. So there's a lot of things to be concerned about. But listen, this football team, has dealt with this situation before where you've got guys injured and players have to step in. No one's been healthy all season long. They've had guys on the defense in and out all year. They had a few guys on the offensive side, especially on the offensive line that have missed games, here and there. And they found ways to just keep chugging and keep winning. I'm not really worried about this game from that perspective so much as I am, the weather conditions. Because the game against Kansas City, they clearly wanted to throw the football. The weather wouldn't allow them to throw the football. So now we come home a week later, and we're going to be facing similar conditions tonight all over again. I don't know how much rain we're supposed to get, whether it's just misty or what the real weather circumstances are supposed to be. But in a lot of ways, it kind of takes away from what they really want to do. They want to throw the football, and when it's cold and when it's wet, it inhibits your ability to really throw the ball the way that you want to throw it.
I want to get back to something here because a lot's been made this week, and I know Nick Sirianni was asked about it earlier in the week. Brian Johnson was asked about it. Sean Desai was asked about it. But really it does come down to the type of format and strategy that these defenses like to play. Most notably now with the Kansas City Chiefs, the Eagles have faced that, and now they're being asked about the Eagles now facing another disciple of Jim Johnson, being able to go up against a guy like Sean McDermott. When you break it down, Seth, and look at these two defenses, having just looked at the Kansas City Chiefs, now look at the Buffalo Bills, do you see similarities between the two that date back to their time here in Philadelphia?
Well, I don't think either one of them are nearly as aggressive as Jim Johnson was. Let's just state that. But I think Spagnuolo is a lot more aggressive than Sean McDermott is. I feel like a lot of these teams now, there's a certain fear that comes along with the aggressive nature of the game, but you can see it week after week after week how important pressure and speeding up the clock of quarterbacks is in the National Football League. But they're so afraid of giving up the big play that they're willing to give up on third down. They got their DBs lined up 10 yards off the ball. Well, the message that you're sending to me is that, yeah, we're in bend but don't break mode. I'm willing to give you 3 yards. I'm not willing to give you 50 yards. And to a certain extent, I understand that. But, I'm of the ilk and I'm of the mindset, I give no quarter, no way, no how, at no point in time. Every little inch of real estate that we own belongs to us, and we're trying to keep as much of it as we can. But this is a different NFL, and the mindset is just different in how defensive coordinators call it. So to answer your question, there are going to be some situations where they're going to test Jalen the same way that he was tested last week. But I think at this point in time, they've seen just about everything that you could see. You got Belichick and, his disciple in weeks 1 and 2. Now, you got Jim Johnson's disciples, in weeks 11 and 12 back to back. So what can they throw at him that he hadn't seen, And I think that the coaching staff has done a very good job, as I alluded to last week and I alluded to on my show this week. I just give Brian Johnson a lot more credit than people want to give him credit for, and I get it. Sometimes, he calls plays and it's a little bit of a head scratcher. But when you really delve deep into the adjustment that they made in the second half of last week's game, it's really phenomenal what he and Nick Sirianni came up with. But you have to really, really dig down through the minutia of it all and throw aside, the 2 bubble screens.
No. All day we're going to talk about them bubble screens.
You got. But I'm just saying, you got to throw them aside and understand and see where the checks that Jalen Hurts made on the quarterback sweep on the goal line, that was a check. The pass to Devontae Smith to set him up at the 1, that was a check. Those were obviously adjustments that were made at halftime, things that they saw that they could make adjustments to. Now, you can't just beat them up about the things that you don't like all the time when they do make plays that make the difference in the game, and you can't just ignore that, And when I went back and I looked at the game, I'm like, you know what? They're doing a pretty darn good job on both sides of the football, mind you.
Well, let's break it down like this. So during the week, that was another big thing that was brought up, and it was Brian Johnson. And unprompted, during just answering a question about the offense in general, Nick Sirianni talked about how this offense has not missed a beat since Shane Steichen was here last year. Those were his exact words. We haven't missed a beat. Well, they're only averaging 1 fewer point per game as an offense, and in the yards game, they're only averaging about 30 yards less per game. Both are still in the top 10 in the NFL, which is pretty darn good, especially when you've never called plays at the NFL level before like Brian Johnson. From another offensive standpoint here, when you talk about the red zone is now up to 80% efficiency in scoring in the red zone over the last 3 weeks. So if you want to talk about making adjustments or improving upon things that you have not been able to improve upon since the start of the year, Brian Johnson and this offense have found a way to improve upon. Now, look, like Seth, to your point, you talk about praising when it's appropriate, giving credit where credit's due, and yes, there has also been a lot of room for criticism with Brian Johnson. But, Adam, when you look at him as an offensive coordinator, the question I had going into today that I wanted to kick around to our panelists today, where are we on Brian Johnson? And it's not the incomplete. If you had to go on a pass-fail situation from where the Eagles are right now, from where they left off a year ago, where are you on Brian Johnson as an offensive coordinator?
And before you jump in that far, you got to understand, a couple of weeks ago, the Eagles was ranked 29th in red zone efficiency. They are now ranked 9th in the NFL in red zone efficiency. So, I mean, those types of numbers that a couple of weeks ago we were like, well, everything looks good, everything's trending in the right direction, we got to get over this red zone thing. You know, so now we're going to find something else to nitpick after they've improved there. But I digress. Go ahead.
Are you in or out on Brian Johnson?
So listen, I've been unfairly critical of Brian Johnson, and I'm okay taking the ownership. I'm not going to say that I'm a Brian Johnson fan, but what I will tell you is that, you know, to Seth's point earlier, this team has not been healthy all season. This team has it's been like one nagging injury after another. We lost Dallas Goedert. We've got Lane Johnson potentially going to be out today. You know, they haven't been in the rhythm that they were. I think last year they were unusually healthy the entire season. So for me to really criticize Brian Johnson like I had in the past, maybe it's not Brian. Maybe it's Jalen Hurts not feeling quite as comfortable at certain times because of his knee and his knee brace. Maybe it's you know, something else. Maybe there's some other factor, but I'll give Brian Johnson a chance because you're right. Those statistics do not lie. And to go to that red zone efficiency, which is where we make the bacon, you know, that's a huge stride. So, look, let's see what happens today. I mean, this type of adjustment, if Lane Johnson's not in, will be very telling for how Brian Johnson scripts his game plan.
Seth, to your point earlier about the bubble screens, we were both in the green room. We were looking at those bubble screens by the Eagles against the Chiefs, and we're thinking, that's not the play to make, that's not the play to make. As the game went on, we later found out the method to the madness is spreading the middle of the field, making sure that the corners and linebackers couldn't cheat into the middle of the field and apply that pressure that we've talked about so many times, the Jim Johnson-esque pressure from a Steve Spagnuolo. So there was a method to the madness there, and the Eagles offense in that second half started to really build on those bubble screens, not using those in particular to actually get big yards, but using them as, for lack of a better term, almost an offensive play call for a decoy in its entirety. But when it comes to Brian Johnson overall, and you see the way he has really manipulated this offense to this point in the season and the improvement it has made, in or out on Brian Johnson to this point?
Well, I mean, listen, how are you out on a guy whose team record is 9-1? I mean, how are you out? You know, has it been easy? No, but you know, you've heard every player say it. You've heard Nick Sirianni say it. You've heard Jalen Hurts say it. You've heard Jason Kelsey say it. That every year is different. You know, and I think the expectation. You know, I said it at the beginning of the year. Success breeds expanded expectation. You know, an expectation in a way that we're waiting for this team to play the perfect game. And to be honest with you, there is no such thing as a perfect game. Even, you know, with Miami putting 40 points up on the team earlier this year, I'm sure that they could go back to the film and find something that was wrong on both sides of the football that they could correct. So there is no such thing as a perfect game. The objective at the end of the day is to win the football game. Teams have spent the entire offseason, the last 7 to 8 months, trying to figure out ways to stop this offense. There was the number 2 ranked offense right behind the Kansas City Chiefs last year going into the Super Bowl. So obviously there are going to be some changes. There are going to be some challenges. There are going to be, you know, some bumps in the road. But they figured out a way to adjust along the way. And what I'm most encouraged about is that with both Sean Desai and Brian Johnson is that we saw massive growth last week in the second half. As a matter of fact, we've seen it 2 weeks in a row, where this football team has gone in at halftime, hasn't looked good in the first half, came out in the second half with a complete shift, a complete adjustment, and found a way to win the football game.
I feel like it's almost a weekly thing now whenever we talk about the run game. Will this be the game the Eagles run the football? Does Lane Johnson not being here, does it help the odds at all? If he's not here, we're still waiting for the official word, but Lane Johnson not being here, does it help or hurt the idea of the Eagles maybe running the ball a little bit more and sticking with it? The weather affected it last week, could affect it again today with the cold and the rain coming down at Lincoln Financial Field, and now Lane Johnson not being here. From my standpoint, I want to make sure that I'm still protecting the quarterback, Jalen Hurts. And I feel like the best way to do that is to put the ball as quickly as you can in a running back's hands. To me, it helps. And also, a guy like Jack Driscoll coming in, a backup offensive lineman, usually the way this goes is the offensive linemen are a little bit more keen to run blocking, the thud and done type of mentality of it all, as opposed to trying to hold that pass block for 3, 4, 5 seconds. So, Adam, do you think it's going to lead to them running the football a little bit more, or are they going to try to maintain the status quo and throw?
I think it's absolutely going to lead to them running it more, and I think that you're also going to see Jalen take off more. I don't want to believe that. I don't want to see that necessarily, but I think that to your point, having these guys be in pass protection mode, prolonged pass protection mode, isn't going to help them, at least on the right side of the line. So let them get out there and push. Let them get out there and drive. And look, we have running backs. We have people who can carry the ball that have the capability of breaking it off. We have people that have the capability of averaging 5 yards a carry. I mean, look, clock management, the more you run the ball, the better off we are. I think that we're going to see a lot more running plays.
More or less running, Seth?
Listen, the Buffalo Bills defense ranks 16th versus the run. They give up 110 yards per game. Against the pass, they rank 11th. They give up 204 yards through the air. That's pretty balanced. There's no one area that you would point to and say, they should attack that area. I expect for them to operate as normal. They may come out and try to establish the run game early, but ultimately once the game gets flowing, I can assure you that first 15 has got the majority of them a pass plays. That's just the way they're wired. That's the way they operate. The problem with the run game is Lane Johnson is a guy who loves to run block, and you can actually see him, when they get it cranked up, how fired up he gets. The problem is, in my opinion, you kind of become from the right guard to the left, dominant in your run, because I don't know that you can really trust running the ball outside or running the ball on the edges to Jack Driscoll's side. I'm just not sure of that. Now, you can go some 12 personnel, one back and two tight ends, and put them both on that side and make a decision to run there, where you have strength. But, to my point, I'm just not so sure how much I can say with certainty how much the Eagles really want to run the football. If it gets messy, if it gets ugly like it was in Kansas City, they may be forced to run the ball a little more than they want to. But, man, it was coming down like it was raining buckets, and that didn't really deter them from really throwing the ball as much as they really wanted to. I mean, they put the ball in the air at a pretty good clip. They threw the ball 7 times, and they ran the ball 11 times in the first half of last week's game. I don't know. It's just going to be interesting to see. You know me, man. Each and every week, I go to my stats to see, okay, this is where they should attack. This is what they should do, But nothing that I ever, could predict or the common sense that I would apply to, play calling ever comes to fruition, because they come out and they do something completely different.
Mm-hmm. I got to tell you, though, what really impresses me or concerns me is those other games where we talked about what they should have done or shouldn't have done, and we talked about how we would predict it going this way or that way. With the exception of Mahomes, none of those other games had a guy who's at this stage of the season thrown for 2,800 yards. So from my perspective, the more we can keep the ball out of Josh Allen's hands, the better off we are. So if, in a perfect world, if offensive coordinator Adam was out there, I would say keep those guys off the field, right? Let's run down that clock. And if we have the ability to keep our line healthy and keep our quarterback healthy and run down that clock and not give a guy who's got 2,800 passing yards and 22 touchdown passes at this point in the season an opportunity to control our game, I mean, that to me is how you have to win this game.
I have some unfortunate news to report. The inactives have just come out, and I'm getting this via Jeff McClain, who is saying that Lane Johnson is inactive today for the Bills game. The right tackle underwent an MRI and received treatment today after he woke up with groin soreness. Jack Driscoll likely to start in his place. So Lane Johnson now officially inactive for today's game against the Bills, and Driscoll expected to get the start there. So everything that we've been laying out looks like, unfortunately, is going to apply in this game as to how much the Eagles run, how much the Eagles choose to protect, and the way they protect Jalen Hurts in today's game. It should all be very interesting. When it comes to everything else in this game, I know one of the big buzzwords coming into this game has been a trap game, a letdown game. This is something I hate weighing in on because, spoiler, I never played in the NFL. But this gentleman over here to my left and to Adam's left did. His name is Seth Joyner. Seth, you are not a big buyer into the idea of a trap game. They're coming off an emotional win. If you're looking for something that is the definition of what should be a trap or letdown game, this very well would be it. Is it? And one of the reasons I still believe the Eagles will win this game, even with Lane Johnson, the news being out there, is I love this team's focus. I think one of the biggest differences that this team and any other team we've seen in the past, even last year's team, is the focus. But do you see this as a potential trap game, letdown game for the Eagles?
See, I'm the person that believes that confidence supersedes everything. And for this football team to go into Kansas City and come out of there with a win, I think that supersedes this thought about a trap game or a letdown game. Listen, this football team understands the importance of this 5-6 game stretch. They do. If there's ever a time for you to focus and be locked in, it's now. Because if you can come through this on the positive side of things, you're going to be sitting in a position where everyone's going to have to come to you in order to get to the big dance. That being said, I've never been a fan of the whole trap game just because, when you're playing the game of football and the game starts, your mind can be somewhere else until the first play when somebody tries to take your head off. And then once somebody tries to take your head off, now you're fully engaged. Now, if you went the entire week and you didn't prepare, okay, that's a lack of preparation. That's not necessarily that, that it was a trap game. If you took a team lightly, that's not a trap game to me. That's just you not being professional in what you do, and that doesn't come across as how this team and how these players and how this coach operates in any facet whatsoever. So I think, at the end of the day, they're going to come into this game. Yeah, they're going to be a little weary because they're not going to have their one of their leaders and their best player at right tackle. But I think this team has a certain amount of confidence rolling into this game this week, knowing that they went into, the Giants' lair and slayed them last week. Because that game, to me, like I said last week, it wasn't so much about the record as it was about their psyche, them understanding, knowing, and then going out there proving. Now they believe, and the confidence goes sky high that they just beat the team that took the Super Bowl championship from them last year.
I don't say this just because I'm sitting on the panel with you, but that's the best I've ever heard, that a trap game, letdown game can be nonsense depending on the schedule. Because the schedule that they have right now in front of them has been so often referred to as the gauntlet, Adam, and you've seen it. We've gone over it many times. It's that if you were going to have a letdown game, it was going to happen before this 5 or 6 game stretch. And maybe the Jets game, maybe that was that letdown game. But if you're the Philadelphia Eagles and you're looking to prove that last year wasn't a fluke and Jalen Hurts' year as an MVP candidate wasn't a fluke or anything like that, if you're looking to prove it, this 5-6 game stretch really has everything. It's for all the marbles. because you have an opportunity here to beat a lot of the teams, the Dallas Cowboys twice, most notably, and also the San Francisco 49ers, also on that list, that could be competing with you for the number 1 spot in the NFC. So to lose focus for a team that has done such a fantastic job, especially over the last 2 years, of maintaining that focus and that motivation on top of it, it's crazy to think that at any point in this stretch that is circled with these 5-6 games, that they would lose focus during this time. And Adam, you followed this team long enough to realize that the focus and motivation they have with Nick Sirianni is something very special.
This team, I'm not worried about losing focus. I think they showed us so much last week with their halftime adjustments and coming back out. I'm not worried about them losing focus on this. I think that these guys are a bunch of winners. I think that Jalen Hurts is an awesome leader. I think Sirianni's doing a great job coaching. You know, they've got guys like Fletcher and Brandon Graham who've been around for a long enough time that they have the respect of all the young defensive players. The focus isn't what I'm worried about. These guys want to come out and they want to compete and they want to win. These guys are true competitors. They want to win every single game. And I look down the schedule, and it doesn't really matter who they're playing. You know, Buffalo, San Fran, you have Dallas, and you have Seattle. Look, we get through Buffalo, San Fran, and Dallas, they're going to start resting some players. You know, if we win those games, it's going to put them in a good enough position where we're going to be able to get our guys healthy for the playoffs. But, you know, focus isn't something that I'd worry about with this particular squad.
What is it, Seth, about Nick Sirianni? Because I know he's been called into question about his emotion, his enthusiasm after games, most recently now against Kansas City Chiefs, saying "see ya" to Kansas City Chiefs fans there as he walked off the field. I love it. I think this is a very emotional city. I think we're a very passionate city, and when you see that reflected in the head coach of your football team, I think most people like it. From a player's perspective, does that let you know that your coach is into it as much as you are?
Listen, I guess so. I mean, it doesn't bother me one way or the other. If Dan Campbell can talk about biting off people's kneecaps and going on with that kind of stuff, why is everybody so up in arms about, you know, Nick Sirianni letting the Chiefs fans have it? Because I'm pretty sure when he walked out of that same tunnel before the game, they were letting him have it. You know, so he's just supposed to be the bigger person just because that's the politically correct thing to do. If that's who he is, just be who you are. Mm-hmm. You know, and I don't have a problem with it whatsoever. Every coach coaches in a different way, and they coach the way that they need to coach for their team. Like when you look at a guy like Mike Tomlin, very serious, you know, a lot of cliches. You know, that's the way he feels he needs to coach his team. If this is the way that Nick Sirianni can get it done, and you can't dispute the guy's record, then just step back and let him be himself, because that's what's got this team to where it is. I just want to go back 1 second and talk about – go ahead, Adam.
No, I was going to say, the guys respond to that, Seth.
Absolutely.
The guys absolutely respond to that.
If the team takes on the personality of his coach, would you rather have a guy like that or a guy who stands there emotionless, no matter what's going on the field, and after the game – he's got 101 reasons and excuses why, okay? Mm-hmm. I wanted to go back because, you know, you guys were talking a minute ago about, I want to say.
We were on the trap game on that note.
Yes, but this is another thing. I know that the guys, especially Nick Sirianni, I think Nick Sirianni cares more than the players actually care. Okay, I know from a player's perspective, it's one of those things where, you know, inside, you know, you might hold it outside, but you don't outwardly talk about it. Like Jalen Hurts, you know, when people talked about what he could and what he couldn't be, he never fought you. He just went to work, and I'll show you. Well, the Eagles are 9-1, and this is the thing that like really pissed me off about the national media last week. No one wanted to talk about the job that the Eagles did winning the football game. Everybody wanted to talk about the drop balls and everything else that went on, and it was and how bad the Chiefs played. Okay, they didn't want to give the Eagles any credit for going on the road in a hostile environment and winning the game. Okay, I can tell you for sure, for certain, that kind of stuff motivates you from the inside. They might not outwardly talk about it, and no one is giving this team any credit. You look at the power rankings, the Eagles are not, you know, ranked, in my opinion, where they should be. No one wants to talk about how good they are and how they're winning games. They want to talk about the uneven level of play that we're seeing. Well, show me another team in the National Football League that's tearing it up, okay? The Cowboys beat the hell out of teams with all the wins that they have. Every single one of those teams have 4 wins or more or less, okay? The games that they lost against teams with winning records, okay?
And to the Cardinals.
And to the Cardinals. There you go. Then you take the Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City Chiefs don't look like the juggernaut that they've been, over the last 5 years. The Buffalo Bills are coming in here today. They don't look like the juggernaut that everyone, quote unquote, thought they would be. And you want to give credit to every other quarterback in the National Football League except for Jalen Hurts. When you watch these other quarterbacks struggle on the same level, you got Josh Allen. Yeah, he might have 22 touchdowns, Adam, but talk to me about how many interceptions he has and how many in 11 games he has 14 turnovers. 14 turnovers. Okay? But nobody wants to talk about that. But they'll want to talk to you about how many turnovers Jalen Hurts has. And they want to talk about how great the roster is, and that's why Jalen Hurts is succeeding. But when another quarterback has a great roster, they don't want to talk about their roster. Their quarterbacks are just, he's just a great player. Just nonsensical. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about a trap game and this 5-game window that's left right here, that's enough motivation for these players to say, no matter what the circumstances are, we're here to prove everybody wrong. Everybody wrong. We've done it thus far, 9-1, best record in the league, in the National Football League by 2 games now, okay? And no one wants to give us credit. Jason Kelsey said it best. They don't like us, we don't give a damn.
unless we can find motivation in it, then we'll just bask in it for a second and make sure it's making them go over the level.
But they should find motivation in it.
I agree.
And I promise you, on some level they do, because I know the mindset of a player. I've been there before, where people talk about what you can and what you can't do, and they don't want to give you credit. They want to give the other team, the blame for not performing up to par as the reason why you won, instead of you being the reason why you won. Like, the quarterback doesn't just say, here's an interception. The running back doesn't say, here's a fumble. Those issues are forced. And when a team forces those, then you have to give that team credit for doing that. Jalen Hurts came out in the second half and figured out a way to overcome a 10-point deficit last week. And the defense figured out a way to hold Patrick Mahomes to 0 points. Why aren't we talking about that? Why can't you give credit where credit is due? If that's not motivation, along with the fact that if they can come through this 5-game stretch, like I said, on the positive side, then they got home field. You got to come to us. You got to come see us. You got to come to the link. You got to deal with our fans.
I really don't feel the need to say anything else. I think we're just going to let you keep going.
Yeah, I'm good with that. I'm voting.
I jump off this pedestal if I had my 30-year-old legs, but I'm gonna need a step.
Yeah, you're on the soapbox. No, hey man, I'm with you. You're preaching everything, and I think you're dead on accurate with it. When it comes to this Eagles team and last year, and we're up against it, but when it comes to the Eagles team and last week, the first thing that pissed me off was the idea that they were lucky that Patrick Mahomes threw an interception. They were lucky that Travis Kelce had that ball punched or fumbled the football. Mm-hmm. I'm like, no, that's not called luck. That's called making a play, yes. Especially the Bradley Roby play. And then it led to the drops after that and how lucky the Eagles were. Sure, on the drops, yeah, maybe lucky, but every team has a little bit of luck on their side.
You know what the FF stands for?
What's that?
It's called forced fumble, okay? Not given fumble, a forced fumble. So all turnovers are forced one way or the other. There's no team out there trying to give the darn ball away.
Right.
So if the Eagles get if a team creates a turnover, it's created because they forced it.
Mm-hmm. Except for that back in the day, Mark Sanchez butt fumble. We won't talk about that.
But
that's
he
for another
forced
day.
that.
The
butt forced.
No, or
that
that
was
ass.
self-inflicted.
Yeah. Or that ass, forced it. Anyway,
yeah.
All right, when we come back, Bill Colarulo is going to be joining us a little bit. But before we let you go, Adam, we got to let you know, or we got to ask you here, what is your official prediction here for Eagles and Bills today?
I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. I have the Eagles 21-17 because I will never pick against my Eagles. So I have 21-17. I'm worried about the weather. I'm hoping that the Eagles take advantage of the clock and, Let's go to 10-1.
I'm skewing lower as well. Adam Malamut, Malamut Law here on the Malamut Law pregame show. Thanks so much for joining us. Great catching up with you as always. We'll be back in a few here on the Malamut Law pregame show.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Any professional sports coach will tell you there's no substitution for preparation. At Malamut & Associates, that is a tenet by which we live. We prepare from day one for victory. Anything less is not acceptable.
We're here to show you a better way to spend your state income taxes and get the money to where it's needed to most to the thousands of qualified kids.
What we like about Blocks is they really know where the need is.
This program ensures that their dollars come 100% into these kids for their tuition assistance.
If you are able, Blocks makes the EITC piece go very quickly and very smoothly.
Turn your PA State tax liability into need-based scholarships and receive a 90% tax credit.
Football and Hooters, the perfect pair.
They're carving them up and good play calling along the way. First and goal at the 6.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Any professional sports coach will tell you there's no substitution for preparation. At Malamut & Associates, that is a tenet by which we live. We prepare from day one for victory. Anything less is not acceptable.
My name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech, we offer 3 major services. The first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
EAGLES. Eagles.
Welcome back to Ocean Casino's incredible gallery bar booking games, where the fans are starting to file in for this late Sunday afternoon kickoff with the Buffalo Bills set for 4:25 this afternoon at Lincoln Financial Field, and the environment certainly being electric here in Atlantic City. Let's bring in Bill Colarulo, our other analyst. Obviously, we're going to get to John McMullen standing by once again at Lincoln Financial Field momentarily. But, Bill, you have an interesting take on this game where turnovers obviously always matter, but could matter in particular in this game today.
Turnovers in the NFL are always important, but even more so when you're playing this Buffalo Bills offense. They're really top 10 in almost every single category. They've been moving the ball really well. They score a lot of points. But they're 26th in the NFL in turnovers. And you look at their 6 wins, they have a turnover differential of +9, and in their 5 losses, a turnover differential of -9. So it's really been feast or famine with this team. I know we're worried about Lane Johnson. We're worried about this offense. But the key to this game, getting takeaways on Josh Allen and this Bills offense.
More important today than most games, especially when facing a quarterback like Josh Allen is coming into this game with a 7 straight game interception streak. Not good for Josh Allen. All right, let's go to Lincoln Financial Field. And, John, I know last time we talked it was in Kansas City and it was a little rainy, so I have to ask you to put on that meteorology hat again. What's it doing right now at Lincoln Financial Field, friend?
Yeah, the rain is here, guys. It is raining pretty steadily, so it's going to be another game. It's supposed to rain throughout the game again. And you saw Kansas City. I don't think you saw sloppy play, but at the end of the day, neither offense was that explosive. So clearly affected some things, and you expect maybe the same this afternoon because it's not going to let up.
Certainly. Now, as far as Lane Johnson, we know that he is inactive right now. What's the expectation there? Is Jack Driscoll out there? Is he going to get the start at right tackle?
Yeah, Jack Driscoll's going to get the start. He was out working, as I mentioned before, after the decision was made. It's pretty clear they made the decision on the field but didn't announce it until they had to, which was at 2:55 basically. Jack Driscoll was immediately out there working with Cam Jurgens a little bit, trying to get that feel, that chemistry for playing right tackle. So, you know, the Eagles have options. Tyler Steen was a 4-year right tackle at Vanderbilt before he moved to left tackle at Alabama. Fred Johnson's here, but he's mainly a left tackle. Jack Driscoll's got the most experience, and they will start with Jack Driscoll. We'll see how long the leash is.
Hey, John, talk about this Bills offense for a second. They fired their offensive coordinator 2 weeks ago, Ken Dorsey. You look at the stats, they're really top 10 in almost every single category outside of turnovers. They obviously can't fire Josh Allen as the quarterback, but do you think that Ken Dorsey was kind of the scapegoat here when it's really mostly Josh Allen's issues?
Oh, sure. Anytime you have a team with expectations, firing a coordinator in season, as you mentioned, Bill, they have the 6th ranked offense in the NFL. So, yeah, but they're 6-5, and this Bills team has been significant playoff contenders for a number of years now. So, you know, they scapegoated Ken Dorsey. There's no question about it. And, you know, I hesitate to say bench Josh Allen, as you mentioned. I mean, for people who want to criticize, and I've said it a lot, Josh Allen is too reckless at times, but he is a big-time playmaker. So I would not let my guard down on Josh Allen. If he's got his A game, he is one of the most difficult quarterbacks in the NFL to deal with. And, you know, it'd be nice to turn him over a couple times. He's susceptible to that. Again, he will, but he's got a little Brett Favre in him, a little bit of a gambler. He's got such a strong arm. He thinks he can put the football in the tight windows. So he'll give you a couple opportunities to get turnovers, and hopefully you can take advantage of them. But I hesitate to think Josh Allen is a negative on this particular team. I would still say it's the exact opposite.
Hey, John, last week, the Buffalo Bills got healthy on the New York Jets. You know, they ran the ball better than they ran it all season long. The Eagles gave up 121 yards on the ground last week in the first half to the Kansas City Chiefs. Any sense for, you know, how they plan on remedying this? I know that they like to get to their 5-man front, you know, to satisfy, to be able to take care of the run. It seems to me that the linebackers really struggle in the run game out of their 4-man front, but they dominate out of their 5-man front particularly.
Yeah, I mean, and that obviously starts with Jordan Davis, as you know, Seth, but also Milton Williams has had a tremendous year. I think he's one of the more underrated players on this team, especially when it comes to stuff in the run. And he's been doing it from, you know, whether it's 3 technique, 4-eye, 5 even. He plays a bunch of different techniques, and he's really good at them all. So it's difficult to find players like that, and that's one of the absences. We're all talking about Lane Johnson, understandably so, but Milton Williams not being there is going to affect the Eagles as well. I don't think it's going to be as bad last week as it was in Kansas City. I think that was a bit of an outlier, certainly as poorly as the Eagles have played against the run this season. But James Cook is having a good year. It's the first time in a couple years that Buffalo's had a somewhat significant running game. So you have to worry about it a little bit more than usual. The Bills with Josh Allen and Devin Singletary, that they basically never ran the ball. So they're a little bit better balanced. And I don't know if that's good or bad, to be honest, because they're not as good as a team as they were when they were chucking the ball all over the place. So, but they're 11th in the NFL in the rush, 7th in the pass. So, it's much more balanced, but it hasn't turned into success on the field. 6-5 is a big disappointment for Buffalo. They're used to much more than that in recent seasons.
John, we were talking earlier about Brian Johnson, Eagles offensive coordinator, and one of the things that I asked was basically, are you in or out on Brian Johnson, the job that he has done so far this season, because his name has become a bit of a lightning rod amongst the Philadelphia fan base. When it comes to the job he has done, and we've seen improvement especially in the red zone, how would you evaluate Brian Johnson as the offensive coordinator and play caller for this football team?
Yeah, I'm with Nick on this one. I don't get people criticize Brian Johnson, and if you have a problem with him, just wait, because he's probably not going to be here next year. At least if the Eagles keep at this level, he's going to be a head coach in this league sooner rather than later. That's one of those things where Nick kind of talked about, Bob Lang getting him prepared for questions and just shaking his head. When the people criticizing him, the Eagles have done an almost eerily similar job offensively to last year, when everybody thought they had this tremendous world-beating offense. I think they're scoring a half point less. So it's been kind of seamless offensively. And you could argue certain plays. I mean, my dislike of the bubble screen is well documented, but the Eagles overused it when Shane Steichen was here as well. And last week in Kansas City, while it wasn't working, it did set up the inside screen to DeAndre Swift. So part of it is that. It's an extension of the running game. When expectations are where they are for this particular team, 9-1 for the second consecutive season, people get skewed and they expect so much. Brian's done a tremendous job, and I can't believe people talk about him like he's doing a poor job.
And John, Brian Johnson has his hands full today. Even before Lane Johnson was out, they gave up 5 sacks in the first half last week to the Chiefs. And this week they're going against one of the best defenses in the league when it comes to getting after the quarterback. If you're Brian Johnson, what are you doing to slow down that Bills pass rush, especially guys like Von Miller and Leonard Floyd?
Yeah, you have to see, one, how Jack Driscoll settles in. So you might have some problems. Everybody talks about wins and losses aren't a quarterback stat and blah, blah, blah. Well, wins and losses have become a right tackle stat in Philadelphia. And it's almost to the point where I think the Eagles are 12-22 without Lane Johnson. And when you compare that to the record when he's on the field, it is unbelievable. So I think, number one, you have to feel how Jack Driscoll's handling things. And if he's not handling things well, I think you have to be quicker to adjust. Now, the problem is, not only is Dallas Goedert out, but Grant Calcaterra's out as well. So you're dealing with tight ends, Jack Stoll, and then Albert Okwuegbunam, plus Noah Tungia, who just returned. So they have some issues at tight end as well. This could be a problem. And, the bet, you could say keep the backs in the chip, but that's not a strength of the running backs on this team, pass protection. So it is something to keep an eye on. Because as you mentioned, the Buffalo Bills can come at you from a bunch of different ways when it comes to the pass rush. And they have a bunch of bodies, whether it's Leonard Floyd, A.J. Epinesa, Ed Oliver inside, Greg Rousseau. Really good pass rush.
So then that leads me to this question, John. I'm sure, you get it every single week from me. Any feel for what direction they're going to go from a run-pass standpoint? Last week they ran the ball 27 times. only passed it 22 times, probably in large part because of, the weather. Seems like, we're going to have similar weather today and so many lineup changes along the offensive line. Any feel for what that may look like today?
Yeah, well, I say every week, Seth, it's not a run-first offense, not a pass-first offense. Jalen Hurts, so number one, is he healthy? He looked healthy, at least healthier in Kansas City. I think that was a big part of the run game, getting more involved. DeAndre Swift had some success also. That factors into it. Are they going to be up 2 scores or down 2 scores? If they're up 10-0, you're going to see more running game. If they're down 10-0, obviously you're going to see more passing game. So I do think that's one of those things where you come in with that first 15 scripted plays. Maybe that part of it's heavy run because of the rain. But then the rest of the game, you have to adjust to what's going on. And the Eagles tend to do that. But Nick Sirianni as a whole, and this is his offense, whether it's Shane Steichen, Brian Johnson, next year it might be Kevin Patullo. It's Nick Sirianni's offense. He's like a lot of modern coaches. If he had his druthers, yeah, let's be honest, he'd like to pass the ball. And certainly they want to get A.J. Brown more involved after 1 catch and 4 targets in Kansas City.
John, on the defensive side of things for this football team, one of the things that was brought up this week, the Nick Sirianni, as well as Brian Johnson, was facing another Jim Johnson disciple, if you will, going from Steve Spagnuolo last week to now Sean McDermott this week, the man who actually took over for Jim Johnson. When you look at these two defenses, do you see a lot of similarities that will benefit Jalen Hurts today, having seen Steve Spagnuolo last week and McDermott this week?
You know what? I don't. Steve's more in the category. Steve's really aggressive, so he's more in the category. Not that he's the same, but Wink Martindale, Brian Flores, who's going to bring a lot of pressure. If you think about Sean McDermott, Leslie Frazier, who was also on those Eagles coaching staffs earlier in his career, he was the coordinator here until Sean took it back this year, the play calling. And he's more of a cover 2 guy, cover 3 guy, zone guy. So even though they go back to Jim Johnson, they've kind of morphed in the time since then. So I don't see a ton of similarities. The Bills would prefer to get after you in the more conventional fashion. And they've been able to do so for the most part with a 4-man rush and keep as many people in coverage as possible. Whereas Steve Spagnuolo is going to try to get you in 3rd and long and come at you from all different angles. So I don't see a carbon copy or anything of that nature.
John, for this Philadelphia Eagles defense, last week you saw Kevin Byard do a pretty good job shutting down Travis Kelce. Well, the Buffalo Bills got a really good young tight end in Dalton Kincaid. Do you expect to see Byard line up across from him today?
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, Kevin Byard is so big to this team in the second half of the season. And we finally saw some of what Tennessee has seen over the years. He's one of the best in the NFL when it's come to dealing with tight ends. And the Eagles, I'm just looking for it. They've given up a quarterback rating of 127.9 on passes to tight ends this season, which is 32nd in the NFL. So it's got to improve. It did start to improve in Kansas City. I think that's going to continue. And I think Kevin Byard, he's going to be a big part of it.
John, the Eagles jumped from 29th in the red zone a few weeks ago to 9th in the red zone now. And no one seems to be talking about that precipitous jump. What do you attribute, to the change down in the red zone?
Well, I think they've been, better on 1st and 2nd downs. Nick talked about it early in the season. They were having a lot of negative plays. And then all of a sudden you're in those 3rd and long situations and it makes things more difficult. Eventually, whether it was penalties, whether it was missed blocks, whether it was relying too much on the quarterback run game, and people were overloading towards stopping that. The Eagles evolved a little bit, and that's why we say, I mean, the NFL as a whole is a small sample size, even when you get through 17 games, and it's always a skewed sample size because it's an unbalanced schedule. Everybody doesn't play everybody, and obviously you skew it from there, good teams versus bad teams. But the more you play, the more those things tend to settle down. And as you mentioned, Seth, all of a sudden they're top 10. So they go from the bottom 3 to top 10. In a number of weeks, that's how quickly things can change. And basically, they just stopped shooting themselves in the foot in those early down situations. And when it's third and manageable for the Philadelphia Eagles, they're difficult to stop.
John, before we let you go, we know the weather. We know about Lane Johnson. So what is your latest prediction for Eagles-Bills today?
Yeah, I'm going to downgrade the score. I had it as a high-scoring game. I think the weather's going to affect that. I think Lane Johnson, I think Eagles got to go about it a little bit differently. Boy, it's tough to pick against this team right now, even without Lane Johnson. 26-2, we know the numbers with Jalen Hurts, his last 28 starts. 14-1, last 15 starts at Lincoln Financial Field. And get this one, guys, 13-0 against winning teams. That is the longest streak against winning teams since 1950. Since 1950. So it's tough for me to pick against them. I think they'll find a way to win, probably 23-20.
And what, just out of curiosity, what was it prior to the rain and prior to Lane Johnson?
33-26.
Okay, copy that.
More of a shootout.
Understood. John McMullen, always great catching up with you. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you again at halftime, my friend.
Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. John McMullen, co-host of Birds 365 right here on the JAKIB Media Sports channel. We'll be back with more in a few. But first, let us talk right now about our great friends at the EBOD Foundation. As we know, we are trying to combat Alzheimer's and we're trying to combat dementia as well. And we're doing so with our Score for a Cure contest going on right now. Our contest and promotion to go with the EBOD Foundation, that's EBOD, as well as JAKIB Media. Here's what you could do. You could text SCORE for a Core. Text the word SCORE to 833-202-9835. That is 833-202-9835. Text the word SCORE for our big game sweepstakes. Also, use the promo codes Team Miss, Team Seth, Team Gun. Yes, that's Gun with 2 N's. And Team Farzi as well. Right now, Team Miss Nelly is a little bit in the lead, just edging out Seth Joyner. Just edging out by a couple of votes. So your vote, your text, can make a big difference to be a part of our big golf event that we're going to be throwing here. Just text the word SCORE to 833-202-9835, and you can help a great cause. More on Eagles-Bills coming up in a few.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Any professional sports coach will tell you there's no substitution for preparation. At Malamut & Associates, that is a tenet by which we live. We prepare from day one for victory. Anything less is not acceptable.
We're here to show you a better way to spend your state income taxes and get the money to where it's needed to most to the thousands of qualified kids.
What we like about Blocks is they really know where the need is.
This program ensures that their dollars come 100% into these kids for their tuition assistance.
If you are able, Blocks makes the EITC piece go very quickly and very smoothly.
Turn your PA State tax liability into need-based scholarships and receive a 90% tax credit.
Football and Hooters, the perfect pair.
They're carving them up and good play calling along the way. First and goal at the 6.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Any professional sports coach will tell you there's no substitution for preparation. At Malamut & Associates, that is a tenet by which we live. We prepare from day one for victory. Anything less is not acceptable.
My name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech, we offer 3 major services. The first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back to the Malamut Law pregame show here at the incredible Gallery Bar Book and Games at the awesome Ocean Casino in Atlantic City. Bill Colarulo, Legal Hands to the Face podcast, as well as Philly Sports Power Hour joining us. And, of course, Eagles Hall of Famer Seth Joyner. Seth, we haven't even mentioned it yet. Kelly Green uniforms back on at the link tonight. That's got to get you excited.
Sweet. I think 2 times a year is far too little.
Too little?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on a second. Let's get this off the books right away. Should it be the regular uniform again, or should it still be a special
Well, we
uniform?
know it's not going. It's never going to be the regular uniform.
Oh, I agree with Devontae Smith was saying earlier in the year when they were wearing it. This should just be the norm.
Hey, listen, everybody. See, the problem is you've got a segment of fans who grew up with the Kelly Green, and a segment of fans, the younger fans, that grew up with the Midnight Green. So there's the fan base is split. But it would be a great opportunity for the Eagles to make a couple more billion and just get back.
And then all of a sudden in 20 years we're wearing the Midnight Green. Oh, the Super Bowl gone. Come on.
Just keep switching it up.
If the Eagles if the Eagles make it to the Super Bowl again this year,
the league won't love it.
Can they wear it? Come on.
I mean, that would be fire. Now.
That would be fire.
That would be fire if they made it back to the Super Bowl and they wore the Kelly Green in the. Oof.
Yeah, I'll eagerly await that. All right, we've been talking a lot, obviously, about this Bills team, and we're still trying to crack the code on who the Bills are. Who is this team that the Eagles are facing at the link today at 425? Because before the season, Bill, we're all talking about the Buffalo Bills, one of those teams in the AFC that has a great chance of coming out of the AFC and potentially seeing the Eagles in the Super Bowl. They have not been able to get past those teams like the Chiefs, for instance, the Bengals, for instance. So now this team is at 6-5. Everything changed for this team. They beat the Miami Dolphins after the Miami Dolphins put up 70 points in Denver against the Broncos. Then all of a sudden they cross the pond and they play a game against the Jacksonville Jaguars in London. And unfortunately, they dropped that game. Ever since then, they've gone back and forth with wins and losses. They lost back-to-back games. They have not won back-to-back games since weeks 3 and 4. If you had to describe what this team is that's now 6-5 coming into South Philadelphia, how would you describe the Buffalo Bills? Who are they?
I do think they're a good football team. You look up and down, they have a top 10 defense. They have a top 10 offense. I talked to you about how you look at every offensive category. They're top 10 in almost every single one of them. And on defense, they've only given up 17 points a game this season. But like we say, good teams find ways to win. Bad teams find ways to lose. They've been finding ways to lose. 26 in the league in turnovers, and Josh Allen is leading the way with those turnovers. So I do think they're a good team. I think they're a dangerous team that I don't think the Eagles should be looking past because they are good in a lot of areas. But the key is takeaways. The Eagles have to produce takeaways, and the Buffalo Bills have to protect the football. If they do, they probably have a lot better record.
It's insane to look at it, Seth, and look at a team like the Buffalo Bills who have 19 takeaways on the season, third most takeaways in the NFL, and still they're only even in the turnover differential.
Well, I mean, it just goes to show you how important, turnovers really are. I think, when a team is starting to struggle a little bit, then you begin to see, a quarterback like Josh Allen, begin to take chances that he normally wouldn't take. And I maybe not go so far as to say as chances that he wouldn't normally take, because he's known for trying to thread the needle and make plays where he shouldn't, and sometimes, that works, sometimes it doesn't. I heard someone say that, Josh Allen is the modern day, Brett Favre in the way that he plays the game. Well, sometimes, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. And he had a lot of success over the last couple of years, making plays with his arm, throwing balls in places that most quarterbacks wouldn't dare throw it. When you live like that, sooner or later, it catches up with you, and it's caught up with him. I think the greatest change that they made, and albeit against the Jets, is they decided to come out and run the football last week. And once they establish that, then that opens up the rest of their offense. Now, you got play action passes. You got, a young tight end that you can get the ball to, which can be problematic for the Eagles today. The prospect of him running the football. The Eagles didn't do a very good job of keeping Patrick Mahomes in the pocket last week. We know that this guy can beat you with his legs too, and they've got call plays for him the same way that they have for Jalen Hurts, baked and built into, their offensive scheme. So there's a lot to worry about. When I look at, where this team ranks, I mean, they don't blow you away with their ranking. They rank 6th in points per game at 26 points per game, 6th in total offense with 372 yards per game. Like I said earlier, they're 11th in rushing. They're 7th in passing per game. So the stats don't really blow you away, but they're very dangerous. They're a very dangerous offense. And if they can get their run game going and he's making good decisions today, it could be problematic. And conversely, on the defensive side of the ball, they don't look all that great. 16th against the run, 11th against the pass, but they can get after you. Those 19 turnovers that you talked about, takeaways. That's not something that the team just said, here, you can have them. They force those, and they get after you in the passing game. If they can get a lead, they will come get you.
The other thing is, I'm curious, and again, as a former player, you're the only one that can speak to this. When somebody loses a job, a coach loses their job, a coordinator loses their job, do people look in the mirror more and say, all right, now I'm costing somebody else their job? Josh Allen talked about it earlier in the week, saying, because I didn't throw the ball well, because I've thrown so many interceptions, turned the ball over so much that somebody else is losing their job because of my mistakes. Does that make people and players look in the mirror a little bit more and take more responsibility?
Yeah, I think so. But, if you've been in the league long enough, you understand that this is part of the business. Players get cut, coaches get fired. It kind of is what it is. It's just a part of what comes along with it. I can't say that, I particularly went out and played for any coach. I may have played for the guys that's next to me and respected the coaches that was coaching me enough to want to do well for that coach. But I primarily played for those guys that were around me and the fans in the city in which I played. Now, that being said, Buddy Ryan is probably my favorite head coach of all time, my favorite defensive coach of all time. I felt pretty darn bad that, he wound up getting fired because, we couldn't win a first-round playoff game. But at the end of the day, it's just the business of it. You come back the following year, you got to do what you got to do. You're getting paid to play the game, so you be professional about it and you move on. I don't think it's any different, with Josh Allen. I'm pretty sure he feels like crap that Ken Dorsey was a scapegoat, for how the offense was operating, because clearly when an offensive coordinator calls a play, if the players execute it the way it's supposed to be executed and it's the right play to take advantage of the defense, then, it's all's well. But I always say the other side gets paid to do what they do as well. And the problem is, if you got a gunslinger that's trying to make plays where he shouldn't and things don't work out, did Ken Dorsey make that throw? We don't know whether when he turned that ball over, whether he even made the right read, So there's a fine line between, the offense isn't operating the way that it needs to, or the offense is operating the way that it needs to when a coach gets fired like that, because at the end of the day, we just don't know. We have no clue, what goes on behind closed doors. And we don't know. The Pagulas may have told Sean McDermott, hey, somebody's got to take a fall here, and that somebody just happened to be Ken Dorsey.
Right. We've talked a lot about what we want to see from this team today. I think one of the number one things is just have a guy like Jack Driscoll play serviceable as a right tackle today, filling in for Lane Johnson, who, again, is inactive. And, Bill, you've talked a lot about the turnovers so far. What's something else you need to see from the Eagles today, other than protect the football and protect their quarterback, to make sure that they come away from this game 10-1 and not 9-2?
We talk about turnovers a lot, but another big factor in the NFL is third down efficiency. Oof. And today you have two of the best third down offenses in the league going up against each other. In fact, it is 0.1% different. The Eagles are number one at 48.2. The Bills are number two at 48.1. It's that close. Whoever wins on third down today may win this football game. And the Eagles, you talked about Brian Johnson with John McMullen, haven't gotten a lot of credit for how good their red zone offense has been. They've been so damn good on third down as well, and they're number one in the NFL on fourth down. A lot of thanks goes to the brotherly shove for that. But if you can extend drives on third and fourth down in this league, you're going to win a lot of games. So if they can win the third down battle today, I think they can win this football game.
Yeah, obviously, especially against the Bills. It's one of the biggest numbers that come into this game. Is really makes it something that makes your eyes pop out of your head when you see the numbers that both these teams put up on third down. The other part of this is when we talk about the turnover battle, one of the things we haven't talked about so far is the fact that the Buffalo Bills, one of the best offenses in the NFL, they have scored 22% of their points this season off of turnovers. Seeing that Lane's going to be out of this game, seeing the combination of the rain in this game, knowing that you've had instances this season with turnovers from your quarterback, it is a little bit more concerning to know that in this particular game, it's not just going to be the turnovers, but it's going to be what the Buffalo Bills have done with turnovers to this point in the season. They are cashing in on opportunities, and it's not going to be enough to be able to force turnovers in the way that they did against the Kansas City Chiefs. The Eagles are going to have to cash in on the opportunities presented to them by Josh Allen, who, again, looking at his last 7 games, has thrown at least 1 interception in every single one of them. And this team that has struggled to find their identity again and find consistency as an offense. So if the Eagles can flip the script on that when it comes to third down, being dominant in that avenue, and also taking that football away to get more opportunities, you're going to see this team come away with that type of success. All right, let's get into our predictions. Bill, I'll ask you first when it comes to Eagles-Bills. Eagles looking to improve to 10-1 on the season. What do you see the Eagles doing today?
Now, I'm already on record because I put this out on my Instagram.
Oh, no. There's a lot of changes since then,
there's been
Bill.
a lot
of changes. We got a right tackle down, and we got rain, friend.
Yeah, I would like to see, though, people are getting excited in here. I don't know who scored. But I'm
going to assume the Giants?
Maybe. Yeah, there are a lot of New York fans here today. But there's Eagles fans are pouring in, which I like to see. But with this bad weather, we talked about the Bills' defense being 16th in the league in rushing yards against. They're 27th in the NFL in yards per carry against. They're giving up 4.5 yards a carry. So I really would like to see the Eagles establish the run early. I feel like we say that every single week. But especially in this weather, with Driscoll in there, hey, a way that you can make up for Lane being out, let this guy run block a little bit. Let him get into the football game. So my original prediction was 31-24.
Oh, wow.
But with the weather, with Lane out, I think you're going to see the Eagles try to run the ball a little bit more, hold on to the football, win the time of possession battle. I'm lowering that score to 24-21 Philadelphia Eagles.
I had the exact same score before everything else came into place. Because of the turnovers, though, with the Buffalo Bills, I'm going to stick with that score today. 31-24, Eagles win this football game over the Buffalo Bills. They'll be able to cash in on those opportunities. Not going to be enough just to pick off the football or punch the ball loose and just keep the other team off the board. They're going to have to cash in on those opportunities. I see them doing it today. With the rain, with the Eagles, I feel being a little bit more inclined to run the football due to the weather and due to Lane Johnson being out. I think they're going to have a lot of success in the run game today against that Buffalo Bills run defense. So I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to say it affects it none. Maybe even if everything was the same, I'd go up in my score. But I'm going to keep it 31-23 in favor, 31-24 in favor of the Eagles. Seth Joyner, what do you got today?
The Buffalo Bills haven't won back-to-back games since week 3 and 4 with a win over the Washington Commanders and the Miami Dolphins. It's easy to get well, in my opinion, against a team that isn't really that good. And while the New York Jets, the strength of that football team, if you want to call it a strength, is their defense and their ability, to, play great defense. The running game really isn't a strength for them. The Eagles are strong against the run, and they know that this football team has to run the football in order to give Josh Allen an opportunity to be turnover free. The more he throws the ball, the more susceptible he is to turning the ball over and having strip sacks and things of that nature. Like I said earlier, I think that this Kansas City win is huge for the psyche and for the confidence of this football team. And even with everything that's going on with Lane being out and Dallas Goedert being injured and missing a few guys on the defensive side of the ball, I think that this football team is in a good place and they understand how important this 5-game stretch is. I'm gonna stick with my number. It wasn't that high to begin with. I like the Eagles to win 26-17.
26-17. Seth Joyner, all of us, we got the Birds winning the football game today. Hopefully this Eagles team will improve upon their record without Lane Johnson, which is just 13-22 without Lane manning the right tackle position in front of the Eagles starting quarterback. So we'll hope there's a little bit of a different outcome coming out of this game. We'll find out. We'll be along with you guys at halftime today. Bill Colarulo and I, as well as John McMullen from Lincoln Financial Field. And also for the Pondla Hockey post-game show, we'll be joining you guys with our friend Mike Missinelli and John McMullen from Lincoln Financial Field. Until then, go Birds.
Go for the polls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Any professional sports coach will tell you there's no substitution for preparation. At Malamut & Associates, that is a tenet by which we live. We prepare from day one for victory. Anything less is not acceptable.
We're here to show you a better way to spend your state income taxes and get the money to where it's needed to move to the thousands of qualified kids.
What we like about Blocks is they really know where the need is.
This program ensures that their dollars come 100% into these kids for their tuition assistance.
If you are able, Blocks makes the EITC piece go very quickly and very smoothly.
Turn your PA State tax liability into need-based scholarships and receive a 90% tax credit.
Football and Hooters, the perfect pair.
They're carving them up and good play calling along the way. First and goal at the 6.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Any professional sports coach will tell you there's no substitution for preparation. At Malamut & Associates, that is a tenet by which we live. We prepare from day one for victory. Anything less is not acceptable.
My name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at Dry Tech. At Dry Tech, we offer 3 major services. The first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
EAGLES, Eagle.